Falcoholic live patrons, welcome to February's edition of our Falcons Q&A session. We first of all want to thank every one of the patrons for supporting us every month. It's really awesome. We really appreciate you guys, and of course we're here to answer your questions as always. I know we had quite a few people submit theirs online. For those of you joining us in person, welcome. I'm sure we'll have people coming in and out, but as always, if you have questions, throw those in the chat and we will get to as many as we can. I'm Kevin Knight, joined of course by the Falcoholic himself. He is Dave Choate. Dave, how are we doing tonight?
Doing great. Living the dream.
Excellent as always. And we also have with us, making a second consecutive appearance, Adnan Ikic, which is a rare feat in Hawks season. So we gotta, take the Adnan while we can. Adnan, how are you doing tonight?
That's 2 in like 24 hours out here.
I know. Yeah. So we got to take advantage. Yeah. I knew we had to have the show tonight. Yeah. So
that's more times than how Dave has been on in the past year.
Well, Dave's a busy man, so we have to take the Dave Choate appearances also when we get them. So.
Yeah, I'm like the Hawks trade deadline, very busy.
Very busy indeed. You did all your work a month ago, and then you just still take credit for it today. So
exactly.
Yep. All right, guys. Well, I know, like I said, if you guys have questions, throw them in there. We'll go until all of your questions have been answered, or 1 hour, whichever comes first. But yeah, I know we had Guy Fieri, aka Solaire, ask this online. He said, so with the Braves and now UGA winning, also with Sean Payton retiring, the Saints imploding, and the news that Tom Brady is retiring, I have to ask, did Kanye living in the stadium actually break the curse? It's hard to argue at this point. Maybe the team in the city having to deal with that nonsense made the curse gods appeased. So, Dave, I know you probably have strong takes on Kanye West and whether or not he broke the curse, so I'll let you take the first shot at this one.
I don't think it's something that obvious. I think it's probably like a butterfly flapping its wings, across the ocean type of thing. Like there was some teeny tiny world event that nobody noticed that somehow broke the curse in Atlanta sports. But that being said, I will buy the idea that there is somehow a straight line from Kanye living in the stadium to Tom Brady retiring. I think that feels right.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with that, I think. What about you, Adnan?
No, we can't give Kanye West that much credit.
Also fair. Yeah. So if it wasn't Kanye, what do you think broke it?
All right. I'm going to sound boring. I don't think that there was a curse. I just think that the last 20-something years of, Atlanta sports misery was mostly because of incompetent front offices.
You're saying the teams were just legitimately bad. That's not possible. That's just not possible. So you're wrong. Dave is right. You're wrong on this one. I'm
sure Super Bowl 51, I just can't explain that.
Yeah, no, that one's definitely dark magic. Yeah.
I don't recall that one.
No, yeah, I don't remember that. Yeah, not at all.
Yeah. What happened there?
What? Yeah, no, I blacked out after January 22nd, 2017, so don't remember anything. All right. We also have Eddie Greer III asking who stood out on the offensive line during Senior Bowl week that the Falcons should look at. Yeah, I'll take the lead on this one. There were quite a few guys. The biggest winner, I would say, of Senior Bowl week was Boston College's Zion Johnson, who also played center for the first time, I believe, in his career at the Senior Bowl and, looked like he could snap the ball pretty well. So he's officially a 5-position offensive lineman. I think he's best at guard, and the Falcons, I would be sort of surprised if they actually did invest like that high of a pick in a guard, but Zion Johnson's awesome. He can play tackle if you need him to. I don't think that's his best position, but is he still possibly better than Caleb McGarry at tackle? I think that's possible. I don't think he's like elite right tackle or anything like that, but where I think is he could be an elite left guard. But when you draft someone like him, you just sort of slot him in to wherever you have a hole, and he can just do that for you. So, I think he's one to watch. I think at the offensive tackle spot, Trevor Penning was probably the best tackle. He was really good. Just a nasty dude that by the end of the Senior Bowl, the defensive players hated him. So if you like that, then he'd be your guy. He was just being rude to people. Just like he would pancake guys after every practice rep and stuff like that, which did not endear him to his counterparts. But I thought it was funny. I enjoyed it. But if I was a defensive defensive lineman at an All-Star game, I might not think it was so funny, I guess. But he's definitely someone who has tremendous length, natural right tackle. The only concern was him coming out of like Northern Iowa, and you're like, okay, is this translatable? And he looked good against all the All-Star guys, so I think it is. He may be someone that's not even available for the Falcons in the second round, but did like him. And then the obvious ones like Daniel Falele, who's just like the perfect developmental tackle for this team that just needs to sit for like a year. And what do you know? McGarry's going to be here for one more year, so it could be the perfect opportunity to get truly like the mountain from Game of Thrones in offensive tackle form for a year. And then he just sort of takes over next year when Caleb McGarry, rides off into the sunset. So,
the sunset. Caleb McGarry's in his like mid-20s.
Well, he rides off into the sunset in Atlanta. The sun comes up. He's on another team. I don't know, something like that. But it's not like his career's over. It's just, he just leaves the city. I'm trying to make it a positive thing, not like he leaves in disgrace or anything like that. But yeah, those were the guys I really liked. But I know Darian Kennard was a standout as like an interior guy, so that's maybe a name to watch as well. And then some more just like depth guys. Bernard Raymond's another guy people like. He was pretty good. So he's another second round potentially guy. In terms of just like other either free agents or prospects at large on the offensive line, Nan, is there anyone that you're sort of circling or looking at for the Falcons to add?
I mean, you kind of named off all the guys. I know we talked about Zion Johnson a lot. This regarding Senior Bowl. We talked about Zion Johnson a lot last night on the show with Thor Nystrom.
Nystrom, yes.
That's
correct.
It's a hell of a name.
Yes, it's great. Terrific.
Yeah, he gave his thoughts, and they were very, very glowing praises of Zion. Said that he was in the rain, soaked, practicing his reps after practice ended. Not a guy I think the Falcons will end up taking just because he's going to be too high for their second round pick, too low for the first round pick. Trevor Penning is a guy where I don't know if he'll be there in the second, but maybe there's some stigma, like you mentioned, about him going to Northern Iowa, which I really don't care about because
Right.
I remember Ollie Marpet, who's now the Pro Bowl guard for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I think he went to a really, really small school. Was it Hobart?
Yeah, it was like Hobart College or something.
Yeah, it's like some D3 school, D2, D3. Like I don't even know. I've never even heard of it before him. He ended up falling to the third round, no doubt because of that stigma, and the Bucs got a steal. So I would welcome Trevor Penning falling into Atlanta's lap with their second round pick of this upcoming draft. That would be a hell of a pick to plug into your offensive line. Hell of a guy you can use to replace Caleb McGarry, who's not looking like he was worth that trade up in first round pick.
Yeah,
at least a couple of years ago. But yeah, I think I don't know. There is this. I do have this feeling that the team may be looking toward offensive linemen in free agency, just because that's more of a safer route to go because there's tape already, and you want someone who can make a direct impact right away with Matt Ryan in the twilight stage of his career. But that's just a hunch I have.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think free agency is the more likely route on the interior, and then I think maybe the draft is more on the outside. But Dave, I know we've been doing a lot of free agency breakdowns and things like that over the last couple weeks. Are there any like free agent offensive linemen that you would want to see the Falcons add, or do you have an opinion on like whether they're going to target the inside or the outside?
Yeah, I still think probably the likeliest course of action is adding competition on the interior and drafting a guy to compete with / maybe take over from McGarry. If you get a guy even second and third round, he doesn't start right away, but he's your swing tackle. And like you said, when Caleb McGarry rides off into the sunset with his sword collection next year,
Yes.
if that happens, then you've got your successor for him. And I think it's good for them to have a plan like that. I think on the interior, it makes sense because you have a lot of young guys who have some question marks to bring in a vet who's established, and then just see, where you can plug that person in at the end of the day, which is why I think James Daniels, I know that's a name that you've mentioned, Kevin. I know Aaron Freeman has been in on him as well. He is young, super talented, can play multiple spots. And to me, that's sort of the ideal guy to add to this competition because he's going to start somewhere and you have two relatively weak positions. Clearly, I think they'd like to see Mayfield develop and keep that left guard job for a second straight year. But, then you can plug in Daniels at center. If Mayfield really falters, maybe you plug him in at left guard. But either way, you're going to get some quality play out of him. So
Yeah.
that's the kind of guy I'd be looking for. But that's what I fully expect them to do is really focus on vets in the interior, and kind of try to get their next right tackle through the draft.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I think that makes the most sense from like a financial standpoint too, because the tackles are always going to be more expensive. And I think it makes sense for all the reasons you said of you've got all the young developmental guys you could possibly want right now in the interior. I mean, maybe you could use one more guard or something, but like, Jalen Mayfield, third round pick, Drew Dahlman, fourth round pick, Matt Hennessy, second or third round pick as well. So you've got all these young guys. You've got the developmental young pieces. If you're not taking a guard at 8 or like with, maybe a pick from a Ridley trade that's in the first round or one of those early seconds or whatever, you're not getting an upgrade really. You're just getting another guy that's going to have to go take his lumps. And we already sat through that with Mayfield. So it's like if you're going to go that route, you might as well just keep Mayfield in there and hope for the best, which is maybe a tad suicidal. But, it's we'll see. I think there's a chance Mayfield could be a better player next year. I think it's almost impossible to be worse. So that, in some ways could be positive. But
it would be a hell of a move to get a late first round pick for Ridley and take someone like a Zion Johnson.
Yeah.
I think that
right before the show I did
right
before the show I did a mock just for fun, to see what would happen if I did trade down, like if I managed to get 21, the Patriots pick for Ridley, and then traded down also to 20 with the Steelers to see like who would be available at 20 and 21. And I ended up taking, I think, like Devin Lloyd and Tyler Linderbaum back to back. And it's like, oh, that would be nice. That'd be a nice little pair. And you pick up an extra second and third too. So.
I'm not going to, this may be doing too much, but I really like the idea of maybe you get 21, you have 8. I would not even mind trading down from both of those picks.
It sounds ridiculous because we haven't seen this team trade down, except one time. But
we have a new GM.
Yeah, I know. It's not impossible. It just feels impossible to me because it's like, oh, we never saw Dimitrov even trade down once. So
imagine going from 8 to 20, and then from 21 to early second or 32 or something like that.
And you pick up you end up having 7 top 100 picks or something.
Yeah. And now you're giving yourself just a number of swings with the bat because, like we keep saying, this team isn't 1 or 2 pieces away from really competing or contending for a Super Bowl. So you want to build through the draft, and nothing is more useful than cheap rookie contract talent that makes impact. Now, obviously, you have to hit on those picks, but imagine if you make those trade downs and then you hit on the majority of those picks.
Right. If you hit on half of 7, you get 4 starters. So
yeah. Now all of a sudden you're talking about a team that's in position, and obviously you'll need to find a successor to Matt Ryan in a couple of years, but you'll essentially probably be one quarterback away from really competing for something.
Yeah. I love the idea of that, and it's still early in Fontenot's tenure, but I think there's a chance he may, I think everyone sees the way the Saints ran things and sort of assume that's how Fontenot's going to do things. He's going to, be very aggressive in free agency and trade away draft picks, to move up and be very aggressive. But that was Mickey Loomis. That was not Terry Fontenot, and Fontenot may have a very different approach.
Year. He showed Loomis last year, if he was hypothetically the GM of the Falcons, would have signed long-term contracts to all of the guys. He would have restructured everyone possible. and the Falcons would be an absolute cap hell going into this offseason.
Yes, but instead they did 1-year deals. They really didn't chase any big contracts at all. They actually traded down in the second, which I loved. I think they probably would have been open to trading down from 4 too if the offer was good enough. They didn't do it, but I don't think that's a big deal. And then you're starting to build like the Ravens, like the Patriots, teams that traditionally do stockpile draft picks, try to get as many rookie contracts as they can, and then load up on comp picks and sort of keep that train going. And honestly, that's the way I would prefer to build a team, other than overpaying in free agency. But it's just like, it's still too early to tell for sure. But I mean, maybe it's a higher chance of that happening as opposed to under Dimitrov.
And most importantly, think of how fun the draft shows will be for us if that happens.
All right, guys, buckle up. We got 4 more picks today on our day 2 to 3 show or whatever. I mean,
even like day 1, all right, what we traded back to 20. Let's analyze. Let's see what we got. Like who's going to be there. We're still very into it, very much interested. And then like obviously day 2 we'll have like a bundle of picks to talk about.
Yeah. I mean,
it won't be like day 2 a few years ago. After
oh my god, that was terrible.
Well, it's also, I do think the one thing that Terry seems to have disdain for is like the really late picks. So we know we're getting out early on day 3 of the draft. Like he's going to trade away any 6th, 7th rounders that he can. Just get out.
And he's doing that for us.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And it's great. It saves us some time that evening. We can settle in. And I also think it's worth talking about too, like, the big free agent contracts piece. Like Terry Fontenot clearly loves a bargain. Like that's what he's good at. Like that's what he was looking to find this last offseason was the bargain guys. And I don't think that approach is going to change just because they get more cap space. So, you talk about building a team by getting as many rookie contracts and, digging up gems as you can. And this is a team that when they dig out of cap hell could really be in a nice position if they go that route.
Yeah. And by the way, speaking of day 3, and I know this is probably something that should be in the Slack, but yeah, no, Dave, I'll commit to doing most of those day 3 picks.
Great.
Cool. Okay. Right. That's in stone. That's in blood now. So yeah.
that is, this is so much better than the years where like I was doing the day 3 picks and running on like 3 hours of sleep the 2 nights before that. Like, this is nice.
Oh yeah.
You're always my favorite.
I was having some fun last year doing it because we had like 2 or 3 day 3 picks like within 5 picks. And I'm like, all right, let me see how fast I can like write this up before the next one comes in.
Very high stakes that was.
It is.
Yeah, and I don't know if folks know this, but the Falcons are almost certainly getting a comp pick for Alex Mack, which will be a very late 6th rounder, so it'll be like in the 200s. So it's not like a premium pick or anything, but they almost certainly will have that pick. So that is an extra pick to begin with on day 3, a late one, but that's sort of what I call a pot sweetener. Those later than 200 picks, like nobody really wants to make those picks. Like you want to like throw it in because you want to go home at a reasonable hour, right? You don't need to be sitting in your office for 10 hours doing nothing. So it's a pot sweetener. So like say that the Steelers do call with offering 20, and it's like, okay, well, if you want to move up to 8 for Malik Willis, we need obviously 20, and we need next year's first. But like instead of taking your second, we'll take a 3rd and a 4th, but you can have our 6th. You can have 211. And then it doesn't look as bad for the Steelers because it looks like they got something back. So they're not, it's like, oh, we're still making like 5 picks this year. It doesn't look like we're only making like 3 picks. And you think I'm joking about this mattering, but like for PR, it absolutely does matter. Like if you only make like 4 picks, the PR is terrible. So, that you got to use that pot sweetener, use that pot sweetener, squeeze out an extra pick, from one of these trades. So and we all get to go home early. Everybody wins. So
and then we get to watch the Steelers next year and completely root against them because we want that first rounder to be as good as possible.
Yeah.
That's a nice feeling when you have. That's why I'd almost prefer to make like a Ridley trade with the Patriots, just because it's so easy for me to root against them. Like, let's just lean into it. Let's do it.
Yeah, fully. So, yeah, I mean, that's, I guess, where I sort of see it happening is to the Patriots. But, we have heard buzz about like the Raiders and other sort of the Dolphins, perhaps, whatever. The only thing that makes the Dolphins sketchy is it probably had to be a future first because they don't have a first this year. But I would still be open to that. If they want to do like a third this year and like a first next year, I would still be fine with that.
I'm going to run an anti-Dolphins agenda next year.
We could do that. Yeah, I could make that happen. But yeah, all right. We spent a lot of time on that question, but we had to get to some serious depth on that one. So.
That's what. We won't just give hollow, short, one-word answers. We're gonna dig deep into it. And have a
You're getting your money's worth out of these questions, folks. So
whether you ask us to or not, we're gonna go.
And you don't ask us to. I know. Even the viewers are like, "All right, get on with it already."
Get on with it. Yep.
Come on.
All right, we got
like one of Dave's long-form articles.
Yes, beautiful though they are. That's.
I stopped sending those because I gave up hope at some point.
I did read like the first two you sent out of respect for you.
Something.
Yeah.
And
they were good.
More than I read.
Yeah. Damn, dropping the hammer. All right. We got Nico. Nico's question is, let's see. Having seen Shanahan struggles in the playoffs, conference games, and the Super Bowl since he left the Falcons, is there a chance that maybe he was the problem? Just maybe? I mean, I think there's probably some small thing about Shanahan's coaching style that makes him more likely to suffer those late game issues as opposed to other coaches. But honestly, like, no. I mean, I don't think he's losing those games because he's like a bad coach or something.
The Super Bowl in an NFC title game.
Yeah.
With Jimmy Garoppolo as his quarterback.
Yes.
He's had much more success than the Falcons have since he's left.
Yes. So like, I don't think there's really any problem with the way Shanahan's doing things. I think, and I would tell this to anyone, the measure of success of a coaching staff is not winning a Super Bowl. It's like, that's great. Like, that's the goal. But actually winning a Super Bowl in any given year is such a low probability thing. It's just not a reasonable thing to expect. What you're hoping for is to win a playoff game. And winning multiple playoff games means you're a very good team. So I think if you had a coaching staff that wins at least one playoff game every year, I would trade that. I would trade 5 years of guaranteeing that you advance to the second round of the playoffs over, one shot at a Super Bowl. Because I think you're much more likely to win a Super Bowl if you make the playoffs 5 straight years and get to the second round than you do if you just get one guaranteed shot at it. Because the Super Bowl, it's such a random thing. Winning one game after like 3 rounds of single elimination playoffs or whatever, it's just very hard to make that work. Like, it's the same thing with fantasy playoffs. Sometimes luck just, destroys you, or you just have a bad game or whatever. It's all about consistently making the playoffs and always being in a position where you can win a Super Bowl. I think that's more important.
What Kevin's trying to say here is that the NFL needs to go into 7-game best of 7 rounds.
Best of 3. Let's start there. But yeah, I don't think you could ever do best of 7 football.
4 wins, and the NFL season just lasts forever.
I would love that. I feel like we probably have to get like bionic limbs and stuff like that before we could make that happen.
Given how bad the Players Association is at bargaining, I'm pretty sure the owners have a better chance of making that happen than we actually think.
Possibly. Yeah. Did you have any thoughts on Shanahan, Dave? Do you blame him at all?
I think the thing that I'd say about Shanahan that I'd also say about guys like McVay, who really did some boneheaded things and got away with it because he's a good coach and he's got a good team, is these guys are like, you think about good NFL coaches, or really any NFL coach, and they're sitting there in their offices, they're at the facility all day, all night, all the time, planning, thinking, planning. And when you come down to it, these situations are things that you can't necessarily anticipate.
Right.
And you have to be, quick on your feet. And I just don't think NFL coaches or lots of people are built to make those split-second decisions effectively. Even if you've had a bad experience in the past, as Shanahan has, like when it comes to the moment, like, and you haven't plotted it all out in your usual brilliant way, you're more apt to make a mistake, or even maybe make a good decision that goes awry anyways. And so, like, no, I think it's not Shanahan per se. I think he's no more cursed in that regard than a lot of really good coaches who make dumb decisions in these big moments. So That being said, the Super Bowl in particular, yes, he messed up. It was totally his fault. I will buy that argument.
Yes, absolutely.
I'm still blaming Devontae Freeman.
Yeah, for sure. We can blame the players. No, I mean, there's a lot of blame to go around, and we won't linger on that. But it's not that simple that it's all Shanahan or whatever. And I know you were being silly on that one, Nico. The question was framed appropriately. But like I said, we're gonna go deep on all of these questions, even the ones you don't want us to go deep on. All right, so we've got Ollie S. What's up, Ollie? He says, I'm intrigued about what we'll do in free agency versus the draft. What do you guys think we'll prioritize addressing in free agency as compared to what we'll prioritize in the draft? Yeah, I mean, we got into that a little bit with the offensive line thing. So, like, on the offensive line, I think they'll probably prioritize, like, a guard or a center in free agency. Like we talked about James Daniels. Ben Jones, the center from Tennessee, I think that's an obvious one. Because I don't know if Tennessee is really that interested in re-signing him to a big deal. They may have they have sort of an ideal pick to go after, like a high-end center in the draft and sort of reset there. But the Falcons could really use a veteran like Ben Jones, even though he's probably going to play at a high level for like 2 or 3 more years. Sort of like Alex Mack, you sign a veteran, bring him in, help him get your offensive line in shape. And then hopefully by then, you either know that you can trust Hennessy or Dahlman, or you've had a chance to add somebody else at that point. But tackle then would be more likely to be the draft, because I think you're going to let a guy sit for a year behind McGarry and maybe upgrade McGarry. I mean, that'd be nice. But if not, you've got time to let them sit and wait. So I think that's perfect for sort of a day 2 pick at tackle. I guess I'm also sort of leaning towards something similar on the defensive line in terms of, like, I think I would probably draft edges because I don't think this is a great free agent edge class, and then sign defensive tackles. I think this is a great defensive tackle free agent class. So that's my sort of thoughts on it. I know I didn't touch on all the positions, but Dave, what are your thoughts on sort of what they might go after in the draft versus free agency?
Yeah, I think you'll see them definitely focus on the trenches, both sides. I think, like we talked about, the interior of the offensive line, I expect there to be, free agent additions. On the defensive line, excuse me, sorry, unless you're into sneezing, in which case you're welcome.
Hashtag Dave me.
But basically, I do think the defensive line, like you look at the defensive line and even outside linebacker, and this team just doesn't have much right now, and they're going to have less after they cut Tyler Davison and so forth. So you'll definitely see free agent additions concentrated there. And I think that's probably mostly where they're going to look, along with wide receiver, potentially backup tight end, because those positions are just gutted depth-wise. And I think even if Ridley is coming back, you need, plural receivers added to this team. Even with Gage resigned, you still need additions. So yeah. I think that's where they'll look. And I'm a little bit leery that they're going to once again go the veteran route at quarterback, even though I think obviously Felipe Franks might step into that if they don't draft somebody because they seem to love him. But I think primarily with the limited dollars I expect them to free up, it's going to be the lines.
Yeah. Adnan, do you have an opinion on any of those positions either?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned it a little earlier today on this show. I'm expecting them to go after offensive linemen mostly on free agency, just because it makes sense with an aging veteran quarterback that you want to give him as much protection as possible, as many impact win now guys. And you said it, we have enough of those developmental guys to where unless you're spending a premium pick on an O lineman, which is possible, especially if you get an extra first rounder for Ridley, you could definitely possibly get one of those impact tackles right away in the first round and have him start day 1. But yeah, Ben Jones is the name that I'm locking in on. Someone who would definitely be an upgrade at center and who could possibly move Hennessy over to left guard, slide him over this year, because I'm not ready to give up on Matt Hennessy, especially after writing his review on the center's review this year. I didn't know that Hennessy graded out so well this season, especially in the run game, to where he just needs to work on that pass protection. And if he can pull himself up to being at least an average pass protector, along with being an elite like run lane creator and run blocking, then you're gonna have a very, very solid starter along the offensive line. And I definitely believe that he can get there this season. Hennessy or Mayfield, I have much, much less confidence in. So I definitely think that we need to address the interior of that offensive line in some way, whether that's bringing in a center and sliding Hennessy over, or bringing in a left guard outright, because you cannot go into this season with freaking Mayfield as your favorite to win the left guard job. In the draft, I would prioritize going best defensive player available for most of the rounds, because this team needs help on all three phases of the defense. And I love the idea of getting a pass rusher, but if Kyle Hamilton falls in your lap at 8, then work with it. Take him, because he's arguably the best player in this draft.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with all that. That all sounds good to me. All right. Speaking of the draft and guys to take at 8, Nico and Ollie both kind of asked about this, but conversation we've been having on the Falcoholic Discord is the idea of taking a quarterback at 8, and who would that be, or who should that be? What do you think about that? The theory of us sort of building on that strength that we already have in the secondary with AJ Terrell. I think it makes sense to sort of. This isn't a defense that's like one first round pick away from being good. So I think taking BPA at 8 makes a lot of sense. You just want to get another high end player for your defense. Period. Like, you just want someone to come in and elevate your whole unit, wherever that is, because you have so many needs. It really could be anywhere. But I think it makes sense, like from a stylistic standpoint, to be like, look, let's say we get to 8 and Andrew Booth is still there, aka cornerback 1. But there's another question about who's our cornerback 1, so we'll get to that in a minute. So yes, I think like deciding to take cornerback 1 Andrew Booth over like George Karlaftis or Jermaine Johnson, it's something I would be fine with. And then you're like, okay, our defensive identity is we're going to have a lockdown group of corners and a good secondary, and we're going to play a lot of coverage, and we're going to throw a lot of exotic blitzes at you because our guys can hold up on the back end, and then we're going to sort of cobble it together at the pass rush. They're still going to add other pieces to the pass rush, probably in free agency and also later in the draft, where the depth is, especially at edge. But they're basically like, we're going to prioritize the secondary right now with this pick, get that completely settled, and then next year we can really focus on the trenches. We'll have the secondary in place, and that way we can just take a really big step when we just are finally able to fully flesh out that front 7 now that the secondary is in place. Because I think 2023, and we've said this before, that's what they're really targeting, is when they're trying to be seriously competitive, is 2023. So, but yeah, Dave, I'll let you, or wait, was it Dave first or Adnan last? I think it was Dave first, so I'll let Adnan take this one first. But yeah, Adnan, what do you think about like prioritizing the secondary this season?
I mean, if the best player available is at 8 and that player happens to be a corner, then absolutely. But like I said, I'm going BPA, but I wouldn't be mad if they decided to go with Booth or Sauce Gardner or Derek Stingley. At 8, I'd be a lot happier if they traded back and took one of those guys in the teens. But yeah, I mean, to pair AJ Terrell with another possible lockdown, shutdown cornerback, like you'll have something working. There's more than one way to build a defense. It doesn't have to start in the trenches, even though I'm always a big fan of building something from the trenches out. You can absolutely build from the outside in, and the pass rush, the linebackers, everything will be easier if you have 2 lockdown corners shutting down the opposing team's 2 best wide receivers week in and week out. I'm sure that Dean Pease would also be very, very happy at that prospect, at that thought. But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be against it, and if it happens, then that just tells me that the coaching staff trusts the cornerback enough to be an impact starter on day 1, and to be one of the guys that'll be one of the cornerstones on defense.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Dave, what do you think about that possibility of actually taking another corner high to sort of solidify that part of the defense?
Yeah, I'm a pass rush guy first. Always. I've been waiting such a long time
So
that I
long.
can't help but keep stumping for it, and I do hope that they address it. But at the same time, there is a lot of value potentially. We saw what Terrell could do, like that insane stat about how the Falcons didn't allow a play longer than 40 yards all year, despite not being a
Somehow.
great defense. Like that's a credit to a few different things, but it is a credit to Terrell in a lot of ways. He was so shut down. And, where you have some interesting young pieces at safety and so forth too, like if you can create that dominant secondary just by, getting a potentially great player to pair with Terrell, I'm not going to complain about that route. Please don't give me the pass rush we had this year again, because I'll be sad. Like it doesn't matter how good your secondary is if there's 5 or 6 seconds for a quarterback to sit there. And I think the proof of that really comes down to what maybe Sam Darnold was able to do, what Tim Boyle was able to do against the Falcons, even with the secondary playing pretty well. But it is a move that I think if it's the way you want to build your team and you're confident that you can get some help up front, then absolutely I'd support it. So, you don't have to go pass rusher at number 8. I think the last time the Falcons tried to get a dominant pass rusher at 8, it did not work out. So there is that history.
Yeah, that's true. We can't let the past define us, though. We have to move forward into a bold new future.
I like that. Okay.
yeah, that's what I'm going with. If anybody brings up the Vic Beasley pick at 8, it's like, okay, this is a new future. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that we're going to get another Vic Beasley, because that's just I'm not going to entertain that. I'm assuming anyone we draft is good. Yeah.
I forgot that Beasley was at 8 too, because I was thinking of Jamal Anderson. So the last 2 times we've tried this.
Yes.
I was thinking you were talking about Beasley too. Like at least he had an All-Pro season in there. But
he did. So, I think on a different environment, different team, maybe Beasley would have thrived. Maybe not. I don't know. So it's one of those what ifs. They all are.
Yeah. But yeah, speaking of that, somebody wants to hear our Derek Stingley versus Sauce Gardner versus Andrew Booth, debates. I don't know if anybody else came with, receipts about which one if you guys have a strong opinion, but the correct answer is Andrew Booth 1, Sauce Gardner 1B, Derek Stingley 3rd. Okay, so and I did get onto the team side a little bit about this, but and so I'm gonna take the lead on this because I think I'm maybe the only one that's actually seen a lot of these quarterbacks, but Derek Stingley is coasting on his hype from 2019 still. This man has not had good tape in 2 years, and he's also barely played. So I can't do it. I can't. At 8, you've barely played in the last 2 years, and when you have played, it hasn't been good. And you're asking me to be oh, well, in 2019, you were this transcendent player. It's been 2 years. I just can't. I would be fine taking a swing on him later in the first round if you really love that upside, and if he's I think he's still the 3rd best corner just because of that upside. But Andrew Booth is a really good corner, and he's been a really good corner each of the last 2 years. He's only slightly less size than Stingley, and Sauce is bigger. So if you want a big corner, Sauce is even bigger. Maybe not quite the elite athlete that Stingley is, but again, has looked good each of the past 2 years. It's not as much of a projection. So I think at 8, I would rather have the good to potentially great corners in Andrew Booth and Sauce Gardner that I feel like I can depend on versus the bad to potentially special corner in Derek Stingley. If I'm, so that's why I have them ranked the way I do. But I mean, if you really love Stingley's potential, that's fine, but it's just a little too rich for my blood, particularly. And some people will probably say, well, they have Terrell, so they could afford, to take a bigger risk on the cornerback too. But I would say if you have Terrell, you don't need to take as big a risk on cornerback 2 because you already have an elite cornerback 1. You don't need, having a second elite cornerback 1 would be nice, but I think there's something to be said for just getting a safer guy like a Booth or a Sauce, who is going to be at least good enough to be a good cornerback too, as opposed to just trying to shoot for the stars with Stingley, that also carries a lot more risk. So I feel like I would rather just, one Pro Bowler in the hand is worth two in the bush, okay? So even though the Pro Bowl's a joke. But I don't know if you guys have opinions on those three corners, really, or if you just, going to let my rant stand on its own.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not swayed at this point, like one way or another. I'm not gonna stand on a table talking about how terrible this is if they take one guy over the other. Maybe that'll change by the time we get to the draft, and by the time I look at more tape on these guys. But yeah, I mean, at the moment, uh, it'll indicate to me, no matter which one of them they pick, that that's the guy that the front office is going after, because I don't think that a cornerback will be taken before our pick. So if they take one of these guys at 8, I'm pretty confident that he'll be the CB1 of the entire draft. And it'll be enough for me that the front office trusts him enough to entrust this top 10 pick that could completely blow up in their face if he busts.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, Dave, you got opinions on that as well?
No, not really. I am increasingly like I'll be by mid-March up to date a little bit and have some strong opinions on the draft, but I defer to you guys. You guys know what you're talking about now, so
That's fair. That's fair. All right, we've got from Ollie S. Wanted to mention wide receiver. Wondering if we could afford anyone good in free agency. I'll pull up the free agent wide receiver list.
Well, it depends. Do you want to keep Cordero Patterson next year or no?
I mean, I do. But
then probably not.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, obviously they've got the potential re-signings of like Patterson, who's played that hybrid role. Also, Russell Gage. So, which funny enough, I believe Russell Gage was actually making less than Christian Blake, according to this chart last year. Just so you guys know, I thought that was shocking, but
he's off being a UDFA and negotiating your own contract.
Yes. So I think, it's very possible, especially if they trade Ridley, that they try to bring back Gage, because they need somebody here that's familiar in the receiving core other than Kyle Pitts. And like maybe and I wouldn't be upset if they also got Tajay Sharp back. I thought he was fine as like a depth guy. So I mean, I would probably do that as well. But in terms of like big name or like really impactful free agents, like you're gonna overspend always for free agent receivers. It's one of those positions that's just like you try not to. But like the top guys, they're not going to be in on, Allen Robinson, Chris Godwin, Devontae Adams, Juju, Mike Williams. Like these are guys that are not really going to be in their price range. But there could be some guys that are interesting. Who was it that I was looking? Christian Kirk from the Cardinals. He might not be too expensive. DJ Shark got hurt, but I think he's got great upside. I think he'd be a good addition. So there are some guys, certainly.
Like after Tim Patrick got $34 million over 3 years, and no disrespect to Tim Patrick, he's a solid, underrated wide receiver. He's not one of the upper echelon guys, and even he's making double-digit millions. He's making 8 figures.
Yes.
The Falcons aren't gonna come away with a big named, high impact wide receiver in free agency. Like they're just not going to have the money for it.
No, like the best we could probably hope for is bringing back Russell Gage. So and like if they trade Ridley, that helps them be able to afford Gage. Basically, you're sort of trading one for the other. I don't think like Gage is going to be ridiculously expensive, but I think he could still cost like $6 to $8 million per year. So. We'll see. But they need to bring back somebody. Well, I know Nico said Zacchaeus over Sharp. Yeah, I mean, I think they will bring back Zacchaeus. I don't think Zacchaeus is going to be costly. I think they'll just be able to sort of probably offer him over vet minimum, but I mean, I don't think it's going to be that hard to get him back if they want him. Same thing with Tajay Sharp. I mean, there's just so many free agent receivers. It's sort of like if you want a guy, just you can keep him. But
I think if they do trade Ridley, the draft will be the way to go because you'll have that extra premium pick. I'm not saying we'll take a wide receiver with that late first rounder, but maybe you take another position of need with that pick. Like I mentioned the Zion Johnson scenario earlier, taking an alignment with that pick. Then that frees you up to maybe take a wide receiver with your first, second round pick.
Yeah. That could be a good idea. I think that could work out for sure. But yeah, Dave, what's your thoughts on potentially taking adding a free agent wide receiver?
Yeah, I think they'll have to, but I do think we have to keep in mind, like, again, I think Fontenot's going to want to find somebody who's not overly expensive, who has some upside, and that's why Traquan Smith is a name I keep focusing on.
Yes, charge on.
Yeah, he's somebody that Fontenot knows. He hasn't been productive enough to command a huge contract, but he's got quality size. He's got some red zone production, and clearly, has the talent. He's a guy that I've looked at for several years in fantasy. Like, surely this is the year he breaks out, and he feels like that
for years too.
Yeah. And so he feels like the kind of guy they'll go after, like somebody who's not going to break the bank, but somebody who kind of fits the mold of what this team is looking for, which I think is going to be sort of that size red zone productivity combo, because that's what the team really lacked this year across the board. And I think it made a huge difference for him. So
yeah,
that would definitely be the name that I would focus on.
Yeah, and, Dave, I love that. Just so you know, I love that. That's a great idea.
I'm a big fan of going after Traquan Smith, but just so you know, Dave, despite the cap restrictions that we have, that this still isn't going to keep people from going to your mention saying, why haven't we signed Allen Robinson?
Yeah, when's Devontae Adams coming? Yeah.
Where is Jimmy Graham?
Yeah, Jimmy Graham, buddy. Oh, my God. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, there's nothing we can do about that. There's nothing we can do.
I'm already stealing. I'm stocking up on canned goods for my mentions in March and April, so we're good.
Yes.
For some reason, people think that Dave makes these decisions. And in fairness, I have tweeted out that he is secretly like the puppet master behind all of the Falcons' moves, just behind the shadows. It would be so perfect if he was, though. But yeah, it's always so funny reading those mentions in April and March, and when free agency starts, and like Aaron Rodgers will get traded to Denver or something, and people will be like, "Oh, why didn't we trade for Aaron Rodgers?"
Yeah. I mean,
people expect me to have answers I don't have, and maybe eventually I'll train people not to think that. But until then, I'll answer it. Not well.
Yeah. But I think that I love the Traquan Smith idea. That's one I hadn't considered yet. So there's so many free agent wide receivers. I feel like I just never scrolled that far down to see his name, honestly.
We'll have to scroll a long time to get the guys that the Falcons will be going after.
Yeah. So, I think there's always talent to be had out there. There's always guys you can find. Like, I think, Tajay Sharp was a good one, honestly. Like, I mean, that was a solid signing. But like they're going to need more, especially if Ridley ends up getting traded. So, that'll be difficult, but we'll see. All right. So we got time for a few more here. We got, Mad Tom K. What's up, man? He says, considering how well Jermaine Johnson showed out in the Senior Bowl, do you think he'll still be on the board at 40? Absolutely not. I don't think he was going to be on the board at 40 before the Senior Bowl. I think he was always sort of a late first round guy before that. But now I think that it's possible he's a top 20 pick. I mean, I mocked him to the Falcons at 8, yesterday. That was a little bit tongue in cheek, but I mean, I would consider him at 8. I don't know that that's going to be the best player available in any circumstance. I feel like if one of the top tackles is there, you probably take a tackle. If cornerback 1 is still there, you probably take cornerback 1. Maybe you consider, somebody else, or maybe you consider Malik Willis. I don't know. I mean, Thor was going so hard to convince us that Malik Willis today was a good idea. I started to get inspired. Like, I mean, it was like an impassioned argument.
He was standing on the table for Malik Willis.
So like, I'm starting to warm up to that idea. I don't know how I'll feel when the draft actually comes around, but I just think there's too many other things that happen that would have to happen for Jermaine Johnson to be the Falcons pick at 8. But after a trade down, I think absolutely he would be someone they would really, really want. But I don't think he's going to last till 40. Definitely not. Let's see. We got Dylan Spires with another Senior Bowl question. Did Cameron Thomas, the defensive end, end up getting injured at the Senior Bowl, or was he just overshadowed? Cam Thomas did like 4 practice reps, and then we never saw him again. They didn't really tell us when people got injured. They just said that new people showed up. So, like, I don't know for sure that he got hurt or if he just pulled out or whatever. I assume he got hurt because it was just day 1. But, yeah, he was not really there. So that's why people aren't really talking about him. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, where's Jamar Chase? Yeah, why haven't we signed Jamar Chase yet? Why can't we sign Michael Vick? Yeah. So, yeah. Oh yeah, I heard someone talking about Rob Gronkowski's better than Kyle Pitts because he had 1 TD and Rob Gronkowski had 6. So, Dylan Spires, yes, thank you for bringing this to our attention, Dylan, so we can dunk on them. Because that's dumb, like Rob Gronkowski's like a 8-10 year vet at this point, playing on an absolutely loaded offense where basically on any given play at least one player was always open because of how good the weapons were. So yeah, Gronk got 6 TDs. He's always been a great red zone player, always been a fantastic contested catch guy. Kyle Pitts as a rookie with like literally Russell Gage and Cordarrelle Patterson as the only threats on the entire offense did get 1 touchdown. You're right, but
it wasn't even on American soil.
It wasn't even on. He had to wait till the Pro Bowl. Yeah. To get his first American touchdown. I don't think that's going to be an issue going forward at all. I think and people were mentioning, and talking about Jamar Chase too, like, oh, well, Jamar Chase is so clearly the better player. It's like, well, Jamar Chase went to like maybe the most loaded offense in terms of weapons in the NFL. Like he went to a wide receiver core that had like 2 other wide receiver 1 types already there. Like Tyler Boyd might be the wide receiver 1 on some teams, and T. Higgins might be the wide receiver 1 on some teams. And then you add Jamar Chase. They also have CJ Uzoma, who's a great tight end. They have freaking Joe Mixon. The offensive line was not good, but the rest of that team was tremendous. So the reason these guys are scoring more touchdowns is that they've got other options in the red zone. If you have no good options, no one's scoring touchdowns in the red zone. So, and
speaking of Jamar Chase and the Bengals, Dave, why don't the Falcons trade for Joe Burrow?
That's what I was wanting to know, actually. So yeah,
they don't want to win. So that's the problem here. We just have guys who don't want to win. So
that's always been the issue. They don't have the drive, the true willingness to do whatever it takes to win, and that's why the Falcons will never make it.
Yeah, I will say, like on the red zone piece, what's funny to me is, I looked this up the other day because I was writing something about Kyle Pitts and the importance of the red zone next year for him, and he got the most red zone targets on the team, and he only reeled in 28% of them, which was like way lower than anybody else, especially Hayden Hurst for some reason. I think that tells you that like the Falcons have the same long-standing problem they had with Julio Jones, where like when you're throwing to this guy who is clearly the most dominant target on the field, you really have to figure out a way to get him open besides just go get open, because it's not working for them. And I think, hopefully they're going to improve the weapons around him this year to make it easier. But I don't think defenses are going to ever want Kyle Pitts to score a whole lot. So we're going to see what Arthur Smith does with that.
Yeah, I agree. And that's one of the key things they have to do to get better on offense is figure out how to score in the red zone. But I think that's a problem that gets better with a better offensive line and better weapons. I think there was more that could have been done from a schematic standpoint to improve the red zone offense, but I don't think it could get better than below average still without serious upgrades on the offensive line and the weapons. Like, it's just, you're never going to have a good red zone offense with just a good scheme and a good quarterback and nothing else. No run game, no offensive line, one weapon that was like a legitimate red zone threat. It's just not going to produce good results no matter who your coaches are. So Last question was from Mad Tom K. He says, "Do you guys have a preference between Falcons leaning offense or defense at 8?" Um, I mean, I guess I lean towards defense at first, and then if it's not my top defensive guys, then I generally look at offensive tackle. So I guess I do lean defense. But Dave, what are your thoughts on that? Offense or defense in general at 8?
Yeah, same idea, really. I think we have to take them at their word that they're going to take the best player available in their minds at number 8. And so I would lean defense. I would love to get a top flight pass rusher if they can make that happen. But, it's going to depend on who's available. Like, you can very easily talk me into somebody on offense if the board falls a particular way and that's the best guy. So defensive preference, not I'm going to be furious if they don't pick defense.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I agree with that. Adnan, you leaning towards defense as well, I think.
You remember that scene from Draft Day, the Vontae Mac no matter what scene, which, last year we made fun of and we did Mac Jones no matter what on the little paper photoshopped sticky note. Well, this year, let's do a similar thing, but let's do BPA no matter what.
Yeah,
So I don't care what position it is, go best available player. It can be literal at this point. It can be any position on
yeah,
on, on the team. Like this team needs a lot. They need almost everything.
yeah, yeah. I mean, and it really is. This will be the last word on it, but you know, I think that people aren't really internalizing that this was a team that loved Trey Lance, who was probably the most like toolsy, but needed a year sort of guy of all the quarterbacks, and that's exactly what he got in San Francisco. But if they loved a guy like Trey Lance at 4, I guess I would caution people to start thinking about the possibility of them valuing someone like Malik Willis, who is a better athlete and who has probably a better arm too in terms of its raw talent. Who's not as polished, probably needs a little bit more time than Lance. But like, if they liked Trey Lance, I don't see why they wouldn't like Malik Willis. I don't see why they wouldn't like Desmond Ridder. They're all sort of similar sorts of guys with that dual threat ability. So I guess at this point, I'm not going to be shocked if we come out of the 8th overall pick and it's Malik Willis. And I'm sure some people will be like, oh, what the hell? Like, what is happening? But like, start preparing for that because, there is a scenario where they could view quarterback as the best player on their board because quarterback always gets a higher weight than everybody else. That's just the way it works.
Yeah, and if they get a scrambling quarterback, they don't even need an offensive line.
Yeah, exactly. Look at the even Joe Burrow, who's I would say not even that mobile. I mean, in comparison to some guys, just having that level of mobility was enough to somehow make it work. So it would certainly help, right? We could just completely ignore the offensive line, and Malik would just escape from everything, and it'd be totally fine.
Exactly. We can just get 5 vet men guys along the O line.
Yep.
And just use the rest of the money on wide receivers. Then
Yeah,
we
well,
keep Devontae Adams and all those guys.
there you go. See, that's the strategy I hadn't thought of yet, but you're really thinking now.
Obviously, we're being facetious. Like,
Yes,
don't be like, oh, the Falcoholic guys don't think that
they don't respect the O line. No, we've had multiple offensive linemen on the program. Okay, we're very big fans of the offensive line. Don't have to worry about that. But
I have pushed the offensive line agenda for years since I've got here.
yeah,
Yeah, like we're gonna get some offensive linemen adding us on Twitter talking.
how dare you disrespect the O line? Yeah.
At the
all right.
Falcoholic, everyone.
At the Falcoholic, yeah. Yeah, guys, thank you so much for your questions. That was a lot of great questions tonight. I really appreciate everyone for coming and hanging out. Thanks for everyone supporting us on Patreon. We really appreciate all you guys. For those of you listening to the show afterward, if you want to take part in these in the future, you can check it out. Patreon.com/Falcoholic Live. If you want to support the show on a monthly basis, get access to exclusive perks like this awesome Q&A session. And we just really appreciate everyone that's been pitching in for that over the last year that we've had it running. Want to thank our great co-hosts tonight. Before we sign off, first of all, Adnan Ikic, he's at Say Which Way on the Twitters. Adnan, anything you want to plug before we get out of here?
I did the Garden Center reviews, went in depth on those in our review series. And yeah, no, that's about it. Don't tell Dave, but I'm not really doing shit right now.
Oh, okay. I won't tell him. Don't worry. You don't have to worry about me saying anything.
Guys, I am right.
Yeah. Oh God, he's still here. Also, of course, with us, Dave Choate at the Falcoholic himself. Dave, anything you would like to plug before we take off?
No, just the great work everybody's doing, even Adnan, who's not pulling his weight. It's been the quietest part of the off season, and we've been really looking back, but I think we're going to start looking forward after the Super Bowl. Hopefully, the Falcons will start making some small moves along the way. So just stay tuned for us taking that look, and hopefully we get a few things right in terms of what we're guessing, because the Falcons are not going to tell us what they're going to do.
I needed a break from this godforsaken team, Dave.
Well, that's fair. I really can't argue with that. So yeah, take the time you need. That's fine.
Yep.
Yeah. No, I'll start on something new very quick. But yeah, that's a very politician-like answer, Dave. Yeah, well, we've been looking back, but pretty soon we'll start looking forward.
Yep.
America, 2022. Looking back, then looking forward.
Then looking forward. Yes, I love it.
Whirling toward freedom.
Yes, with the
twirling.
Ferocity. Yes, twirling even. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I'm Kevin Knight at Falcoholic Kevin. Like I said last night, we will be off next week because I'm taking another brief vacation. But we'll be back the week after that for more content, hoping to get some more great guests on this offseason. We'll have obviously free agency stuff coming, and the combine is coming real soon as well. So lots of good stuff, lots of stuff to watch, lots of stuff to look forward to. Great content coming at the site, thefalcoholic.com. Until next time, guys, thank you so much. Have a great night. We will talk to you next time on the Falcoholic Live. See you, folks.
Yes.